Today, I want to walk you through a full, detailed explanation of why Canada is still moving forward with additional F-35 fighter jet orders, even though the decision has been debated for years, criticized in public discussions, and repeatedly questioned in terms of cost, strategy, and political direction. To understand this properly, you have to think beyond just the aircraft itself and look at the wider defense ecosystem Canada is part of, the strategic obligations it carries, and the long-term planning logic that often drives military procurement decisions. Canada's decision to acquire more F-35 Lightning II fighter jets is not something that suddenly appeared in isolation. It is the result of decades of planning within the Royal Canadian Air Force and broader North American defense cooperation. The aircraft is produced by Lockheed Martin, and it is currently the most advanced fifth-generation stealth fighter widely available among Western allies. When Canada evaluates its air defense needs, it is not simply asking what is cheapest or most politically convenient. It is asking what system will keep it interoperable with allies, particularly the United States, and capable of defending its enormous airspace under modern threat conditions. One of the main reasons more orders are still moving forward is that Canada has already committed itself deeply into the F-35 ecosystem. Once a country commits to this type of advanced weapons platform, it is not like buying a single product and walking away. It becomes a long-term dependency structure involving training systems, maintenance networks, software updates, spare parts supply chains, pilot training pipelines, and secure data systems. At this point, Canada has already invested billions of dollars into preparation, infrastructure upgrades, pilot conversion training, and integration planning. Walking away now would not simply mean avoiding future costs, it would mean wasting a massive amount of already sunk investment. Another major factor is interoperability with NATO and NORAD partners. Canada is a key member of both alliances, and its Air Force does not operate in isolation. In real-world scenarios, Canadian fighters must be able to integrate seamlessly with American and NATO aircraft during joint operations. The F-35 has become the backbone stealth fighter for many of Canada's closest allies, particularly the United States. That matters because Canada's air defense is closely tied to the North American Aerospace Defense Command structure, where coordination with U.S. forces is essential. If Canada chose a completely different aircraft, it would risk logistical fragmentation and operational inefficiencies during joint missions. There is also the question of modernization. Canada's current fleet of CF-18 Hornets is aging. These aircraft have been in service since the 1980s, and while upgrades have extended their life, they are increasingly limited in survivability against modern threats. In today's environment, advanced radar systems, long-range surface-to-air missiles, and stealth-capable adversaries mean that older fourth-generation aircraft are significantly more vulnerable. The F-35 offers stealth capability, sensor fusion, advanced electronic warfare systems, and networked battlefield awareness that older jets simply cannot match. From a military planning perspective, Canada cannot delay modernization indefinitely without creating capability gaps. Now, it is important to understand that Canada did not arrive at this decision overnight. There was a long and controversial procurement process spanning more than a decade. At various points, Canada considered alternatives such as the Swedish Saab Gripen and even debated extending its legacy F-18 fleet further. Political shifts changed procurement strategies multiple times. However, over time, evaluations consistently showed that while alternatives might offer lower upfront costs, they would not match the F-35 in terms of long-term capability, survivability, and interoperability. Cost is still one of the most debated aspects. The F-35 is expensive not only to buy, but to maintain. Critics often point to life cycle costs as a major concern. However, defense planners argue that cost must be evaluated in terms of capability delivered, not just sticker price. A cheaper aircraft that cannot survive modern combat environments may end up being more expensive in strategic terms if it fails to deter or respond effectively to threats. Canada's defense strategy is heavily focused on deterrence rather than large-scale offensive air operations, and the F-35 plays a key role in that deterrence posture. Another important reason more orders are moving forward is industrial participation. Canada is not simply buying aircraft, it is also part of the global supply chain for the F-35 program. Canadian aerospace companies contribute components, engineering services, and manufacturing inputs into the broader program. This means that canceling or reducing orders could also impact domestic aerospace jobs and industrial contracts. Governments often weigh these economic benefits when making procurement decisions, especially in high-value defense sectors. There is also the reality of global security changes. The strategic environment has become more unstable in recent years, with increased great power competition, evolving air defense technologies, and more sophisticated missile systems being deployed globally. In such an environment, stealth and networked combat capability are no longer optional. They are becoming standard requirements for advanced air forces. Canada, sharing the world's longest undefended border with the United States and controlling vast Arctic territory, has a strong interest in maintaining credible air defense capabilities in that evolving environment. The Arctic factor is particularly important and often underestimated in public discussions. As climate change opens new shipping routes and increases geopolitical interest in the Arctic region, Canada's northern airspace becomes more strategically significant. Monitoring and defending that region requires aircraft capable of long-range operations, high endurance, and advanced sensor integration. The F-35 is designed with these types of missions in mind, particularly when supported by aerial refueling and networked command systems. Another reason orders continue is simply momentum and timing. Defense procurement is slow, complex, and planned years in advance. Once production slots are allocated in a global manufacturing line like that of the F-35 program, altering those orders can create delays, penalties, and capability gaps. Canada has already entered into scheduled delivery timelines, meaning that aircraft are being built in sequence for multiple countries. Backing out at this stage would not be simple. It would involve renegotiation, potential financial penalties, and delays in receiving any replacement aircraft. There is also the political reality that defense decisions are often made across multiple governments over time. One administration may begin a procurement process, another may modify it, and a later one may finalize it. By the time Canada confirmed its move forward with F-35 acquisition, the program had already reached a point where reversal would have been highly disruptive. This continuity is not just political preference. It reflects institutional military advice that emphasizes long-term stability in capability planning. Critics of the F-35 often argue that Canada could achieve similar defense outcomes with cheaper aircraft or mixed fleets. However, operating multiple aircraft types increases training complexity, maintenance costs, and logistical burdens. Military forces tend to prefer fleet standardization when possible because it simplifies operations and improves readiness. The F-35 offers a unified platform that can perform multiple roles including air superiority, ground attack, intelligence gathering, and electronic warfare. This multi-role flexibility reduces the need for multiple specialized aircraft. Another major factor is software and data dominance. Modern air combat is increasingly about information superiority rather than just physical performance. The F-35 functions as a sensor fusion platform, collecting and sharing battlefield data in real time with other assets. This transforms it into more than just a fighter jet. It becomes a node in a larger digital combat network. Canada's defense strategy places growing importance on this type of networked warfare capability, especially when operating alongside U.S. forces. Training and pilot readiness also play a role. Transitioning to a new aircraft type is not just about purchasing jets. It requires training pilots, maintenance crews, and support staff in entirely new systems. Once Canada committed to the F-35 program, training pipelines were already established in coordination with allied training centers. Reversing course would mean restarting or duplicating those pipelines, which would take years and significantly increase costs in the short term. There is also the issue of global supply security. The F-35 program, despite its complexity, has become one of the most widely adopted advanced fighter platforms among Western allies. This creates a shared logistics ecosystem that improves parts availability, upgrades, and software enhancements over time. Canada benefits from being part of that shared system rather than operating a unique or isolated fleet. In addition, defense planners often think in terms of decades, not electoral cycles. The aircraft Canada is purchasing today will likely remain in service well into the 2060s or even 2070s. That means decisions must account for future threats, not just present conditions. The F-35 is designed with upgrade potential in mind, allowing its systems to evolve over time as new technologies emerge. That adaptability is a key reason why it continues to be selected by multiple countries despite its cost. Finally, there is a strategic trust component. Canada's defense relationship with the United States is one of the most integrated in the world. Choosing the same primary fighter platform reinforces that alignment. In practice, this improves joint mission effectiveness, intelligence sharing, and operational coordination. While Canada retains sovereignty over its forces, interoperability with its closest defense partner remains a central consideration. When you put all of this together, the sunk costs, alliance commitments, modernization needs, industrial benefits, Arctic defense requirements, and long-term strategic planning, it becomes clearer why additional F-35 orders continue moving forward in Canada. It is not a simple purchase decision. It is a multi-layered strategic commitment shaped by decades of defense planning and evolving global security realities. Even though public debate continues and alternatives are still discussed, the underlying structure of Canada's defense strategy makes the F-35 the most integrated and operationally aligned option currently available. And once a country reaches this level of integration with a platform like the F-35, the path forward becomes less about whether to continue and more about how to optimize what has already been set in motion. To go even deeper into why Canada continues expanding its F-35 acquisition, you also have to consider how modern air forces evolve as systems of systems rather than just collections of aircraft. The F-35 Lightning II is not treated by defense planners as a standalone fighter in the traditional sense. It is more accurately described as a networked combat platform that connects satellites, ground-based radar, naval assets, and other aircraft into a single real-time operational picture. For Canada, which has vast territory and relatively limited military resources compared to its geography, this kind of integrated capability is particularly valuable. One of the less visible but extremely important reasons behind continued orders is software dominance and continuous upgradability. Unlike older aircraft that are defined mostly by their physical design, the F-35 is heavily software-driven. Its capabilities improve over time through system updates rather than requiring entirely new airframes. This matters because Canada is not just buying today's technology, it is buying into a long-term upgrade pipeline that is expected to evolve for decades. Defense planners see this as essential because threats also evolve continuously, especially in areas like electronic warfare, radar detection, and missile guidance systems. There is also the issue of survivability in contested airspace. Modern air defense systems have become extremely advanced, especially with the widespread deployment of integrated radar networks and long-range surface-to-air missiles. In such environments, older generation aircraft can be detected and targeted much earlier in their mission profiles. The F-35's stealth design reduces that detection range significantly, allowing it to operate in environments where older jets would face much higher risk. For Canada, which may need to operate in Arctic or maritime regions with limited support infrastructure, survivability becomes a core requirement rather than an optional feature. Another factor influencing continued procurement is strategic predictability. Military alliances like NATO rely heavily on standardization to ensure that forces from different countries can operate together without friction. As more NATO members adopt the F-35, it effectively becomes a common operational language for air combat. Canada benefits from this because it reduces the complexity of coalition operations. In real-world missions, especially under NORAD coordination with the United States, having compatible systems allows faster decision-making and tighter integration during airspace defense scenarios. You also have to consider life cycle economics in a more realistic way. While the upfront cost of the F-35 is high, defense planners evaluate cost over a 30-40-year operational period. That includes maintenance infrastructure, pilot training systems, simulator networks, and upgrade cycles. Once those systems are established, the marginal cost of operating additional aircraft becomes more efficient compared to maintaining multiple different aircraft types. Canada's decision to proceed with more orders reflects this long-term cost stabilization strategy rather than short-term budgeting comparisons. Another layer is industrial and geopolitical positioning. Canada participates in the global supply chain for the F-35 program, which means its aerospace sector is partially embedded in ongoing production and maintenance work. This creates a long-term economic linkage that extends beyond simple aircraft purchases. It also gives Canada a stake in one of the largest defense programs in the world, ensuring continued relevance in advanced aerospace manufacturing networks led by companies like Lockheed Martin. These industrial relationships matter because defense procurement is often tied to broader economic policy, not just military requirements. There is also the question of operational readiness timelines. Canada cannot afford long gaps in air defense capability, especially given its responsibility to monitor one of the largest airspaces in the world. Transitioning from legacy fighters to a new fleet must happen gradually and predictably to avoid leaving capability gaps. Since deliveries of the F-35 are scheduled over many years, continuing orders ensures that Canada's Air Force maintains a steady modernization curve rather than experiencing sudden disruptions or delays. Political dynamics also play a quieter but important role. Once a defense program reaches advanced procurement stages, it becomes institutionally embedded across multiple departments, including defense, finance, industry, and foreign affairs. Even if governments change, the complexity of reversing such programs becomes extremely high. Contracts, training pipelines, international agreements, and supply chain commitments all create a structure that is difficult to unwind without significant financial and operational consequences. In Canada's case, that structure has already been built around the F-35 program. Another often overlooked factor is deterrence signaling. Modern military procurement is not just about actual combat use, it is also about signaling capability to potential adversaries. The presence of advanced stealth fighters like the F-35 communicates a certain level of technological and operational readiness. For Canada, which operates in a highly interconnected defense environment with the United States, maintaining credible deterrence contributes to overall regional stability in North America. The Arctic dimension continues to grow in importance as well. As polar routes become more accessible due to environmental changes, military planners anticipate increased activity in northern airspace. Surveillance, interception, and rapid response capabilities become more critical in that environment. The F-35's advanced sensor suite allows it to detect and track a wide range of aerial and surface targets over long distances, which is particularly useful in regions where ground-based infrastructure is sparse. There is also a training ecosystem factor that reinforces continued procurement. Once pilots begin transitioning into F-35 training pipelines, that expertise becomes specialized and cumulative. Reversing course would not only waste training investment but also risk creating a gap in experienced personnel capable of operating advanced systems. Military institutions tend to prioritize continuity in training programs because they directly affect operational readiness. At a broader strategic level, Canada is also responding to the global shift toward multi-domain warfare. Air combat is no longer isolated from cyber operations, space-based surveillance, and electronic warfare. The F-35 is designed to function within that multi-domain environment by acting as a data collector and distributor across multiple platforms. This allows it to support not just air missions, but also ground and naval operations through shared situational awareness. For a country like Canada, which often operates as part of coalition forces rather than independently, this integration is highly valuable. When all of these layers are combined, technology evolution, alliance integration, industrial participation, Arctic security, training continuity, deterrence signaling, and long-term life cycle planning, it becomes clear that continued F-35 orders are not driven by a single factor. They are the result of a highly interconnected defense strategy that prioritizes long-term capability stability over short-term flexibility. Even though public debate around cost and alternatives will likely continue, the structural logic behind Canada's decision-making remains consistent. Once a nation integrates deeply into a platform ecosystem like the F-35 program, each additional order is less about making a new decision and more about completing a long-term strategic transition that is already well underway.